I'm still trying to process the events that led to my world being turned upside down, but the one thing that keeps echoing in my mind is the sound of my own voice screaming, "You're dead to me," as I watch the person I trusted most walk out the door, leaving me shattered into a million pieces. I had always thought that my life was pretty normal, waking up every morning at 6 a.m. to get ready for work, grabbing a quick breakfast, and heading out the door to catch my bus. I worked as an accountant in a small firm, and my days were filled with the usual routine of number crunching and meetings. After work, I'd head to the gym to blow off some steam, and then meet up with my friends for dinner or a movie night. My weekends were usually spent running errands, doing chores, and catching up on my favorite TV shows. I had a close-knit group of friends, and we'd often have game nights or go on hikes together. My family was also very supportive, and we'd have Sunday dinners together every week. I felt like I had a good balance of work and play, and I was content with my life. I had been dating my girlfriend, Sarah, for about 3 years, and we had been living together for 2. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I thought our relationship was solid. We'd have our disagreements, but we always managed to work through them. I remember one time, we had a big fight about our future plans, but we talked it out and came to a compromise. I thought that's what relationships were all about, finding common ground and supporting each other. I had given her my trust, and I thought she had given me hers. We'd talk about our dreams and aspirations, and I felt like we were on the same page. Or so I thought. It started when I came home from work early one day, feeling exhausted and stressed out. I walked in the door, expecting to find Sarah cooking dinner or watching TV, but instead, I found her in our living room, talking to someone in hushed tones. As I approached, I realized it was her ex-boyfriend, Alex, who she had told me she hadn't spoken to in years. My heart sank, and I felt a knot in my stomach. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Sarah turned around, a look of guilt on her face, and said, "Oh hey, I was just catching up with an old friend." I raised an eyebrow, feeling a sense of unease. "An old friend?" I repeated, my voice laced with skepticism. Alex spoke up, his voice smooth as silk. "Yeah, we were just talking about old times." I didn't believe them, and my mind started racing with questions. What were they hiding? Why was he really here? And why did I feel like I'd just been punched in the gut? As I sat in my dimly lit apartment, surrounded by stacks of dusty law books and empty coffee cups, I finally stumbled upon the loophole that would change everything. It was a small, seemingly insignificant clause buried deep within the contract that my former employer, Reginald Thornton First, had used to screw me out of my car IGHTFUL share of the company. The clause, known as a sunset provision, stated that if certain conditions were met, the contract could be rendered null and void, restoring my original ownership stake in the company. I spent hours poring over the clause, analyzing every word, every comma, and every semicolon. I cross-referenced it with other laws and regulations, looking for any possible connections or precedents. And then, it hit me. The conditions that would trigger the sunset provision were not only achievable, but also ridiculously simple. All I had to do was gather evidence of Reginald's wrongdoing, which I already had in spades, and then submit it to the relevant authorities. The plan was starting to take shape. I would gather all the necessary documents, recordings, and witness statements, and then submit them to the Securities and Exchange Commission. I would also file a lawsuit against Reginald, citing breach of contract, fraud, and a host of other charges. But here's the beautiful part. I wouldn't just stop at ruining Reginald's reputation and finances. Oh no, I would take it a step further. I would use the evidence I had gathered to take down his entire empire, brick by brick. The execution of my plan was a slow burn, a carefully crafted symphony of revenge. I started by quietly gathering allies, people who had been wronged by Reginald in the past and were eager to see him taken down. There was Emma, the former employee who had been fired after she discovered Reginald's embezzlement scheme. There was Jack, the investor who had lost a small fortune due to Reginald's shady business dealings. And then there was Sarah, the journalist who had been investigating Reginald's company for months, but had been consistently stonewalled by his lawyers. Together, we formed a tight-knit team, working tirelessly to gather evidence, build a case, and spread the word about Reginald's wrongdoing. We created a website, a social media campaign, and even a podcast, all dedicated to exposing Reginald's crimes and bringing him to justice. And as the momentum grew, so did the attention. The media started to take notice, and soon Reginald's face was plastered on the front pages of newspapers and magazines. But I wasn't just content with ruining Reginald's reputation. I wanted to hit him where it hurt the most, his wallet. I started by filing a series of lawsuits, each one aimed at a different aspect of his business empire. I sued him for breach of contract, for fraud, and for a host of other charges. And as the lawsuits piled up, so did the legal fees. Reginald was forced to hire an army of lawyers, each one costing him a small fortune. And then, the final blow. I discovered that Reginald had been using his company to launder money, to fund his own lavish lifestyle. I gathered the evidence, and then I submitted it to the authorities. The IRS, the FBI, and the SEC all launched investigations. And soon Reginald's bank accounts were frozen, his assets were seized, and he was facing a very real possibility of jail time. As I sat in my apartment, watching the news reports of Reginald's downfall, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The plan had worked, the execution had been flawless, and the revenge had been sweet. But as I raised my glass in a silent toast, I knew that this was only the beginning. There was still one more step to take, one more blow to strike, and that would be the final nail in Reginald's coffin. The sweet taste of victory. It's been 2 years since I exposed my former boss's embezzlement scheme, and the fallout has been nothing short of catastrophic for him. The company fired him immediately, and he was subsequently sued by the board of directors for damages. The lawsuit was a slam dunk, and he was ordered to pay back every penny he had stolen, plus interest. But that wasn't the end of his troubles. His wife, who had been living large off his ill-gotten gains, left him and took the kids with her. She even got the house and the divorce settlement, leaving him with nothing but the clothes on his back. I heard he had to sell his fancy cars and jewelry just to make ends meet. As for me, I'm doing great. I was hailed as a hero by the company, and my bravery was rewarded with a significant promotion. I'm now in a leadership position, and I've been able to implement policies that prevent this kind of thing from happening again in the future. I've also been able to rebuild my life, free from the stresses and anxiety of working for a corrupt boss. I've started taking classes at night, and I'm working towards a degree in accounting. I figure, if I'm going to be a whistleblower, I might as well have the skills to back it up. I've even started a blog, where I share my story and offer advice to others who may be in similar situations. It's been a huge success, and I've been able to connect with people all over the world who are fighting against corruption and injustice. Looking back, I'm proud of what I did. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. I stood up for what was right, even when it was hard, and I came out on top. I hope my story can inspire others to do the same. I'm now living my best life, free from the toxic work environment and the stress that came with it. I've got a great job, a wonderful family, and a sense of purpose. I know that I made a difference, and that's all that matters. TLDR.
Stare przysłowie. Historia uczy, że nie ma nic bardziej stałego niż zmiana, a nie ma nic bardziej niezmiennego niż ludzka natura.